Ah. Hi, I'm Travis Whitmire, and welcome to another lesson in getting started with guitar. We got our beginning guitar phase one going here, and today I'd like to discuss standard notation, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's the standard for notating music. So, let's make this very simple and relate it to something that most of us are already familiar with, which is just reading in general. Reading music, reading a chart, reading a book. Really what we're doing is we're taking symbols that we notate in some sort of short form that allow us to transfer information from one medium to another. So just as right now we're capturing a live image of me in the real world and making it into a digital transformation, well, it's somewhat similar in how we take what we hear and we write it out. So we take something audible, we make it visual, so then we could package it up, send it away, share it, whatever we want to do, and be able to relay it back into the real world again. So reading music, reading a book, symbols, we see letters, they make groups of words, sentences, paragraphs, we tell a story. Well, in music, we're just trying to tell a story also. So what do we need? We need some sort of symbols that allow us to capture the information and store it, or save it, or transfer it, and share it later. So as we look at these lines and these symbols below here, what do we see? We see a couple of vertical and a couple of horizontal things with some dots, okay? And it might seem a little mysterious right now, but just know as we learn more about music and as we start talking about music theory, it's really a great idea to have at least somewhat of a grasp as far as what this notation means. So as most guitar players are exposed to the world of tablature and chord diagrams, those are very specific to just the guitar, whereas standard notation is something that is used by virtually everyone else in the world of music that reads music and writes music. And it's great to be able to learn some of the fundamentals. Even if you're not going to be a fantastic sight reader or a studio musician, you still have the opportunity to read books from 200, 300 years ago. Well, same with music. We can take things that have been written, whether it's for a flute or a piano or a cello, or actually for a guitar in itself, and you could take this by deciphering this code, so to speak. You'll be able to go through and be able to enjoy the music. So with that being said, there's a little bit of the hows and whys. So let's talk about the what. What are these things? Horizontal lines, spaces, let's keep that in mind, and then the little figure that we see, which looks like a G. So what we have in the world of standard notation is basically we have an upstairs and a downstairs, just like we have an uptown and a downtown on our guitar. Well, the upstairs and downstairs is, think of the upstairs as being high in pitch, and downstairs being low in pitch. Let's go low. Let's take it low for a minute. Low. So low, like low instruments, bass, high instruments, treble, high in pitch. Remember we talked about the high in pitch. So now we can associate this thing that looks like a G as a G clef, and that's also going to be our treble clef. And then we look at this other little line down here for our bass clef, and that's an F clef. So we have these two different areas, and oftentimes what we're going to find is that music is written for a specific instrument or a section, and they're going to read in one of these different clefs. Now, a piano will, of course, read in both. But that being said, we're going to focus primarily on the treble clef because that's what the guitar reads in. So again, as we look at this little figure here, it looks like a G, that's our treble clef. So just know that's to tell us what position we're reading in, what clef we're reading in. So is this for the high end pitch people, or is this for the low end pitch people? All we have left right now are the lines going the opposite direction, which are going to be the lines and spaces. So if we want to have a good way to remember this, our lines, we're going to have a little catchphrase here. So our first line is going to be the first word of our little phrase. So let me just give you the phrase here, which is every good boy does fine. So those are our 5 lines, 5 words, E, G, B, D, and F. Every good boy does fine. Those are the names of the notes that are associated with these lines. So anytime you see a little dot, whether it's solid or not, but you see something on that line, that means that's the name of that particular note. So now all we have left are these spaces. So we don't have a phrase, but we have a word. Face, F-A-C-E. So face, if we're able to then just go to the first space here, for face we have an F, the next space is going to be an A, the next space will be a C, and then an E. So with that being said, we have notes above and we have notes below. I'm not going to worry about that right now. I just wanted to give you an introduction into the standard notation, where it's used, how it's used, and why it's used. And from there, we'll be able to expand upon this in the future, but at least now we have an understanding, and we can see that just as an alphabet goes up, A, B, C, D, well, if we look and we see that our first line is E, and we continue to climb up the alphabet, so to speak, so we can see that as we go up in this vertical across these lines, that we're going up in notes. So now we're going to be going up. And when we see the notes going down in a very visual way, we see that the pitch is going down. So I'm going to leave it at that for right now with the standard notation, and we'll dive more into it in another lesson. But there's your exposure to standard notation. If you got any questions pertaining to this particular lesson, let me know. And otherwise, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll catch you in another lesson. Aloha. Going down. One hand. I can't even believe it. Hi, I'm Travis Whitmire, and welcome to another lesson in our beginning guitar phase. In this section, we're talking about getting started, and one of the things I think is important in getting started with music is understanding some of the basics of terminology, and then also the visuals. What do we see that allows us to capture musical information and store it for a little while and bring it back into the world? And by that, I want to look at an analogy here, and we'll talk about reading in books. So somebody has an idea, and they want to be able to share this idea with generations down the road or with somebody far away. Well, what are they going to do? They're going to take and they're going to use their understanding of writing, and they're going to take and make letters, make words, going to make sentences and paragraphs. They're going to write it down, and somebody else far away in another time can look at this and say, I know how to read. I can read this story. It's a great story, thanks. Music's similar in the sense that we use symbols and we notate these symbols in a linear fashion, the same way that we read music from left to right and reading left to right, the same way that we have words, we have notes. We're able to capture information. And just think of it this way, in a simple way, we're capturing the essence of music by taking symbols and placing them into the standard notation for others to read and enjoy. So if we have just a basic understanding of the standard notation, we can develop and we can grow with this in future lessons. You can jump in on anywhere on the internet. I'm sure there's 1,000 ways to learn to read music. That's not the focus of this lesson. The focus of this lesson is to understand one more way being able to visually share musical information. So we've got the tablature, and we've got the chord diagrams, and those are very specific to the world of guitar. Standard notation is not specific to the world of guitar. Now, of course, as a guitarist, you can learn to read music in standard notation, but this is for everybody: pianists, bass players, flute players, accordion. It doesn't even matter. A note is a note written, and you learn to read it, and you learn what that note is on your instrument. However you push it, play it, squeeze it, whatever you do, a note is a note. And a note is written as that note is written. That's why standard notation is a great way to be able to understand music, because now you're able to actually learn music that was written for any instrument. So let's jump right in here to the world of lines going this way and pretty pictures going this way. So we see what looks like a G, and appropriately named, this is the G clef. So we have two clefs when we're reading music, and we have an upstairs and a downstairs clef. So let's think of upstairs as being high and a downstairs being low. Let's think of high being high in pitch or register. Let's think of low being low in pitch and register. So generally speaking, specific instruments read in a specific clef, either upstairs or downstairs. So trying to make this as simple as I can: guitar, G, clef. That's just for you, all you little guitar players out there. So don't be scared of the world of standard notation. It loves you. Embrace it, at least a little bit. G clef for you guitar players. That's where we're going to focus. Music written for guitars, written in this upstairs neighborhood. So that means we could primarily focus in this area, at least as we're beginning in the world of understanding musical written terms and notation. Let's talk about these lines. And what do we have between these lines? Spaces. How are we going to remember this? A couple of easy ways. First way for the lines is we have a little catchphrase, just like we did when we learned the names of the strings. Oh, it's still there. So as we learn the names of these lines, or we're learning the notes that are played by the symbols that are placed on these lines. So let's just jump right into every good boy does fine. It's a little phrase, and each one of these words in the phrase has a beginning letter. So this beginning letter, just like we did with the strings, is actually symbolic for the note. E, G, B, D, F. Every good boy does fine. Doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. So now we have the spaces that we see here in between these lines, and we don't have a phrase, but we do have a word. And I'm sure you can make a phrase out of this word if you want. Face, there it is. There's the word. Pretty simple. And if we look at the first space, that's going to be the first letter of the first word. So we have an F-A-C-E. That's the space in between the lines. So space, face, and that's about it. As far as reading, knowing what these notes are, of course there's a lifetime of learning more symbols, and this can get very complex down the road. We don't need to go there right now. I really just want you guys to be able to have an understanding of the different ways that music is captured in let's say a visual form, and how we're able to take this and create this story and store it and put it on a shelf or in a book or on a computer and share it, send it, play it. So that's about it for standard notation right now. We're going to talk later about reading notes and music and whatnot, but just know for right now we have a clef for guitar, we have upstairs and downstairs, so we also have a clef for our neighbors that like to go low, and we have lines and spaces. We put a little dot on one of these lines or spaces to represent a note, and that's about it. So, as always, see you in a while, crocodile, later alligator, and crazy chord. How about this one? One more time. Catch you later.